Namaste. Thank you for tuning in to Atman.
Okay, so here's the thing. We need to begin this episode by reminding ourselves that relationships can either be dysfunctional or they can be straight up toxic. And neither of them determine if one of the person who is in the relationship is to take the blame of either breaking or making that relationship entirely. It is always a two-people street, and within this conversation between you and me, I would love and invite you to sit here and, kind of separate the idea of yourself while you were in the relationship and be in this position of observer, and not only observe yourself and the other person within the relationship dynamic, but also apart from it, so that healing can take place on a personal level, and then you can move on to forgiving the other person. And that would probably be the very first step into moving out or moving back into a different space. Another thing to note, which is really, really, really important, is the fact that no relationship is ever going to be perfect. You might have had the best, I'm going to prepare myself to get into a relationship, to be with someone, to prepare myself, I've done everything. Every relationship will bring out some aspect of yourself or the other. And not every relationship that you want to label toxic is one, because you just labeled it to be. I have seen people walk out of beautiful relationships because they haven't been able to heal themselves. They haven't been able to heal their childhood issues or traumas, and they want to buck out at the first sign of it. That does not mean that the relationship was toxic or the people in it were. That means that it was dysfunctional in a sense where either party was not mature enough to look at the mirror and identify that they had issues and they did not want to work it out. This episode is more about self-reflection and understanding what an archetype can be while you are a young adult into a relationship, rather than, picking and popping and pointing fingers and trying to justify what you're feeling right now. Because if you are somebody who's trying to walk out of a relationship, it is going to be hard. It is going to be stressful, and it is going to play with your emotions as well as your fundamentals at the same time. So the best way to do this is give yourself time and reflect upon yourself more than the other person. Because it all just comes back to, how you feel. A toxic relationship is literally defined by the idea of what you feel. Do you feel that the other person is constantly lying to you, that your boundaries are questioned, that your decisions are manipulated, that you're being controlled, or the fact that they haven't been supportive, or the fact that you are losing up your sovereign position, or if they're gaslighting you? The thing is, if you're walking into a relationship and you are changing not for the better, and you're feeling drained and you try to spend time with that person and you come back and you feel like you're just tired, but there's just a lot of weightage on your back, those are the toxic kind of relationships. Any relationship, good or bad, is meant to challenge you, and in healthy relationships, those challenges will make you cross your boundaries. They will inevitably bring out childhood issues, and sometimes lessons can come through in a way where, you know, you are put into lessons will show up in a way where it is to make you realize that, you know what, you are in the same position again, but the way you're responding to it internally and externally are different. It might come up as a way to show you that, you know, this is how you have grown. And in a lot of places, people most of the times people hold themselves back, because I will give you a true story around multiple situations that I've heard. A lot of times men will give out on a relationship out of ego, while women will give out on relationships because of fear. Now these both go back to internal childhood archetypes of the hurt that people have given. When a woman has always been the person who will shut the world, who would lock herself back, who would need to be really, really strong and independent, and she would actually show up with issues of, you know, letting people in. She would not be able to accept love, she should not be open to it because she's afraid of being hurt. And that fear ripples out in so many multiple ways until she herself will see and learn to open her heart so broad and wide that there's just overflowing love everywhere. And that transition, while she is either in and out of opening up and closing out, is going to be really, really tough. It is going to pull out a lot of her issues, and that's what relationships are going to do for that archetype. The kind where the woman wants to be everything that she needs because she's afraid of being hurt. She'll build out walls around herself, and then she'd have to break those walls on her own and fight all of these things on her own. For the masculine ego archetype, it is going to be about proving himself. It's going to be about establishing his need onto the world, or establishing his position onto the world, and it is going to be reflected in a way of him trying to possess everything that comes on his way. So those needs to be established, the need to be able to be seen in a certain way will overpower a lot of things, which will inevitably have created issues. So both of these are the most common archetypes that you notice in this trend in our generation of the world, and I'd like to point that out. How many times have you emotionally withdrawn yourself out of situations, or how many times have you been in a position where, you know, you just let it go because the position that you were in felt good for either of the places? And yes, I'm not saying that the world is like an absolute beautiful place and everybody is just healed people who are trying to work out, but they are. Everybody is just hurt and trying to make their places. Sometimes two individuals that just walked into a relationship became too much for each other. They became people who did not just show you what your issue was, but contributed more and reinforced it more. That's called the enabler syndrome, where a people pleaser would enable the narcissist to keep hogging on to love while keeping himself locked up, and a narcissist will keep validating the people pleaser constantly. So they're not just putting up mirrors, but they're also reinforcing the toxic behaviors and the toxic traits among one another. Those relationships are 100% toxic, and they are probably one of the most difficult ones to get out of, because your mind and your body feels safe. It is safe when somebody keeps validating you constantly, when somebody constantly keeps making your decisions for you, who just control you all around, because that feels safe, because you are afraid of making decisions and failing. It feels safe because toxicity feels normal. It feels like something wherein you won't be hurt, but you're constantly being drained of your own self. The other kind of relationships are really not relationships. They are like contrasts that you make with that person, literally. It's like, this is my ideal person. This is the kind of person I should be going out with. You are attracted to them, but you're doing either of the three things. Either you're fighting, either you're doing the super cute couple thingies, or you're making up for the fights in all of the physical and gifting and this and that ways, where you just come back and you're like, you know what, this is not something I can handle, but this is something that I'm supposed to be doing. this is the kind of person that I'm supposed to be hanging out with. But it's just all a cycle of fighting, making up, doing cute things, fighting all over again. And that is exhausting. Constantly having to fight, constantly being in that cute zone, constantly having to make up and using physical things as an excuse to make up. Doesn't work like that. Then there are the karmic kind of relationships where it is just super focused and super intense on the lesson that you're supposed to learn. Like, you would walk into a very controlling relationship and you will have to realize that this control is not working for me. It's bringing out other issues in my life. Or it could be a relationship where you're constantly giving and giving and giving while the other person just love bombards you when they feel nice and then moves out of your life whenever something goes up or down in theirs or yours. That's like an extreme codependency situation, and all of those things are very common. People just don't realize it while they're in there, and that is why I am asking you to move out of the space that you were in that relationship. Come to a space of observing and then observe what you are feeling now when you look back. Looking at it from an observer, a non-judgmental perspective on yourself and the other person. So what are toxic relationships? Were you really in a toxic relationship? Do you need to blame the other person completely? What are the lessons that you brought to the surface while you were in that relationship? All of these things are something that you might need to sit back and journal, or you might need to find someone who is a non-judgmental kind of wise person who could, navigate that track for you. But you're gonna constantly see these factors of constantly being gaslighted, constantly being controlled, constantly being manipulated, constantly being felt like you don't have a value in the relationship. There's a difference when a person changes because they want to be somebody versus when a person changes so that they don't lose or they do not upset the person they are in a relationship with. The first one is when you decide to step up because you feel called to, while the second one is completely based out of fear of losing the other person. So if you're noticing yourself in a trend of changes, you need to also notice why what the propeller motion is all about. And when I'm talking about these, they sound really, really straightforward formal terms, but until and unless you realize that this was the position I was in, there is an awareness factor. Then there is an acknowledgement factor. This is what happens. You move over the denial phase. You put yourself in a neutral position. You move out of the role that you played in that relationship, and then you begin to heal. You begin to understand yourself. You begin to understand why you put yourself in that position. The anger, the resentment, the hate starts reducing. You start forgiving yourself, and then you move on to understand the other person. You start forgiving them. And after the forgiveness is done as a basic process, you can move on to think that, is it something that was really bad and I need to say tata bye bye, or is it something that you can just be like thank you next, or is it something where you want to be in a position and you have the energy to either mutually decide that these are the things that we'll have to work about, or sometimes when it is a dysfunctional place and one person is just not mature enough, it is clearly a choice of time. Do you have the time and energy to put into that, or do you not? These are all very, very personal decisions that you will have to make, but at this point, your focus is you, forgiving yourself, loving yourself, moving over those places, because you cannot love someone more than you love yourself. You cannot forgive other people if you haven't forgiven yourself. So I invite you at the end of this conversation to do just that. To come back to yourself. To tell the child inside you who felt the fear and built walls around herself, or who felt unneeded and tried to establish himself into the world, go back to that child and invite them in. Make them feel loved, make them feel wanted, make them feel accepted. Remove the guilt, remove the fear. And once you are in this position where you're working through and getting out of the trauma-based archetype, you can do it. That's when you are ready to decide if this is something worth being in a relationship for or about. It's just as beautiful as looking at a reflection in the water and saying, oh my god, this is so beautiful. This is something that I need. This is something that I want. This is something that I wanted as a kid. And the transition is not going to be easy. It's going to be a spiral of up and down, round and about. And the only thing that matters is you keep moving in the direction of healing. Take help from people. Find your support system. And you know the best way to find what you exactly needed? You know that one moment in your life where something happened and you were like, this is the moment I want time to stop, or this is the moment where I felt appreciated or I felt safe. Go back to it and give your childhood self that. Modern day relationships are not just hookup cultures anymore. They seem to be, but they're not. They're transcending the boundaries of superficialness, and this entire podcast is about everybody who wants to not just get out of a toxic relationship with another person, but themselves as well. The world simply needs to choose love.